सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
A bunch of revelations have come out lately that Government of India or the security or surveillance agencies of Government of India are looking for, I'm tempted to say, fishing for new kinds of spyware. You know that a couple of years back there was the Pegasus controversy when the stories had come out, and quite authentically, or so authentic that Government of India neither confirmed nor denied it. If there was nothing to it, they would have denied it. The stories were that Government of India or agencies of Government of India had bought something called Pegasus software from an Israeli company called NSO, and that software did what was called as spear phishing, which means a spear basically opens up a space where you put in something, and then that something then infiltrates your device and gets information out of it. That was done usually through WhatsApp messaging, other messaging. So something was planted in the brains of your device, your computer, your phone, whatever. So then it didn't matter even if you were using an encrypted communication channel like WhatsApp claims to be, although I don't trust it, or Signal or Telegram or any of the others. Because once you put a Mickey in the head of the device, then everything else becomes accessible to you. Also, that had the ability to do funny things with your life. For example, it would track where you are going, who you are talking to, pick up your conversations. Most of it was true. Maybe there is some mythology also, because mythologies do get built around these things and manufacturers love mythologies. So since that came in bad odor, Supreme Court ordered an inquiry, and Pegasus itself got into trouble in many countries, but particularly the US, and that's where everybody fears the law. So in the US, both Apple and Facebook, now Meta, filed very sizable suits against it because they were using WhatsApp to infiltrate phones, and once again it was Apple, which otherwise claims to have a very safe system, that was infiltrated. So they both filed cases, and also the US administration cracked down on them. Biden administration also said that US will not allow any such activity, etc. I will come to that in just a minute. Now, since that stopped, it was only a matter of time before countries who do not have the ability to develop this kind of device, this kind of softwares by themselves, they went out looking for competitors, and this market is filled with competitors. So Pegasus was one, NSO was one, but there are many other competitors. Now, reports have come out that Government of India or its agencies are looking for new surveillance, particularly phone and device computer surveillance equipment. First of all, there is no surprise that they are looking for it. This was inevitable, because all countries, we have to be fair, all countries, intelligence agencies need this stuff. The question is this stuff then utilized for legitimate purposes, that is catching criminals, terrorists, spies, enemies of the state, those who really threaten the state, or is it then misused against people of the opposition, critics, journalists, to spy on your own? Because you know what happens when these things become so easily available, it becomes a case of inmates taking over the asylum, which means everybody has access to this within a system and can use it against whoever catches their fancy on that day. So countries then set up systems to ensure that this kind of very powerful weapons, these are weapons, this kind of very powerful weapons are used discreetly, carefully, lawfully, and with some due process and disclosures. That is where the debate lies. Now, the Congress party today has held a very angry press conference. They do that often, but today they have something of substance. They've quoted these reports in the Hindu, the Indian paper, Financial Times, the international newspaper. That was a couple of days back. That was a story by Mehul Srivastava and K. Wiggins. The Hindu stories by Arundeep, and we also found a couple of Reuters stories, a story in Haaretz, the Israeli paper. All of these are telling us something. These are telling us that now Government of India or its agencies, I keep on specifying this again and again because Government of India is a very large entity, and the agencies can be agencies which are not in public domain at all, like say NTRO. We don't know where its funds come from, how those are spent, or funds that say the other intelligence organizations have. A lot of these are unaudited funds. So CAG will not look at where you are spending them. But also there are agencies, say of the Ministry of Defense, which work on defense budgets. So in this case, the Hindu tells us that the first ordering has been done by what is called as SID or Signal Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense. Now, Ministry of Defense would say we have perfectly legitimate concerns. We have to keep an eye or an ear, not on one frontier, but two frontiers, and there are enemies of India lurking everywhere and spies, etc. So we need this stuff. So Hindu says that it's SID which has made some purchases, and the Hindu story also says that they've seen some trade data that confirms that these purchases have been made. Otherwise, the stories between the Hindu, Reuters, other disclosures, including the Congress press conference by Pawan Kheda, they are quoting a figure of $120 million. So the Congress is saying that the government is buying this new equipment called Cognyte, and I will tell you about Cognyte in just a minute, worth $120 million. But if I see the international press, particularly those who are well informed in these areas, it looks like Government of India has put out a request for proposal. So lots of competitors will now bid, and it looks like this will begin with an initial purchase of $16 billion. That is about 130 crore rupees, and then go up to $120 million, which will be, by the time the order is fulfilled, I suspect close to 1,000 crores. Congress party has converted it on today's values at 938 crores. Now, Cognyte is the equipment that it looks like at this moment that seems to be a front runner. Now, Cognyte itself, there is no surprise as to what the pedigree of Cognyte is. It comes out of the Israeli Brains Trust. Israeli military runs this spectacularly successful unit which has a humongous reputation all over the world called Unit 8200. Now, Unit 8200 was set up in 1952 mainly from remnants of leftover equipment by the British and others, and since then has acquired a very large reputation. It does a lot of cyber warfare. It is very adept at also cyber snooping. It also has some of the best technical minds. In many of these minds, because of the way the Israeli military system works, people don't work their whole lives in the military. Everybody is a kind of Agniveer there, so they come out and they set up their own companies. So many of these people have set up companies of the kind that sold Pegasus to many countries in the world. That company was NSO, NSO. Actually, as we explained to you in the Cut The Clutter episode we had done then, and I'll share a link with you, those were the initials of the first names of the three founders. The NSO/Pegasus founders also had the Unit 8200 ancestry. The same thing seems to be the case with Cognyte. Cognyte earlier was a company listed as Verint. You can search it. Even now it's listed as Cognyte on NASDAQ. It does not have such a large valuation right now. These things keep varying. So I'd say put it in the 350 million ballpark. Again, Reuters and FT tell us that last year the company's turnover was almost $500 million. Not quite $500 million, but almost $500 million. And the company was taken so seriously that the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund had also put money in this company, a sizable amount of money. Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, as we know, is rolling in cash because at some point of time, Norway discovered oil. So Norway is as much an oil power as say any of the Middle Eastern oil countries are. So they had spare money, small country, small population, lots of money. So they set up a sovereign wealth fund, but Norway also has a big quote-unquote liberal commitment. So once some revelations came out about Cognyte, they withdrew their investments from Cognyte, and that's what made Cognyte famous. And what were these revelations? These revelations were that in 2021, on the exact eve, in fact, almost a week before the coup in Myanmar, the Myanmaris junta made a big purchase from Cognyte, and that Cognyte software was then applied from Myanmar's telecom system. And later, international companies, including Scandinavian countries, Norwegian as well, who were running the telecom system in Myanmar, made admissions to the effect, and they said that they resisted the use or employment of this software, but it was used by Myanmar, and that is why Cognyte became controversial, which is the company that it seems like now, or at least that is the story right now, that India's agencies are looking at for buying a software which is commercially traded. So the difference between now and the time of Pegasus is that now India, all countries are becoming careful because they don't want to run afoul of the American legal system, of the US government. So they are looking at new softwares, spying softwares which are commercially traded, which are not seen to be as weapons grade, say, as Pegasus was. So Cognyte sale to Myanmar became quite controversial. Not in Myanmar. What controversy can you have in Myanmar? If you whisper controversy or something, you will be shot or buried, or some funny things will happen to you, or not funny things will happen to you. So forget Myanmar. But there was trouble in Israel. So in Israel, activists, particularly human rights activists, led by Israel's most famous human rights lawyer, that is Aite Mack. I hope I pronounced the name right. He went to court, Israeli Supreme Court, and that put restraints on the company from selling more to Myanmar. Also, the human rights lawyer, has been asking for a criminal investigation. And that case is on, and it's a rare case, I read in Israeli press, where the court has put a gag on court proceedings. That means court proceedings cannot be reported because it is seen as a legal challenge for the sale of a weapons grade software equipment to a regime which is right now in bad odor all over the world. And the important thing is, in 2017, Israel had publicly sworn or vowed not to have any military dealings with Myanmar. So if Israelis have done it, if an Israeli company has done it, it's a violation of that commitment. That's why this is in the Israeli Supreme Court. This, by the way, has been sold to many other interesting countries: Kenya, Mexico, Indonesia, and it's been used in all these countries to spy on journalists, politicians, or people you would call as usual suspects for targeting with this kind of software, particularly by strongman regimes. Meta has banned this. So Meta, Apple, they are very suspicious of this software. Now, why is India, like many other countries, looking beyond Pegasus? Pegasus is in trouble. Although NSO is saying our finances are doing fine. It was widely expected that NSO will go bankrupt after the revelations on Pegasus. So they are keeping a brave face, but the fact is that it's very expensive to fight these legal cases in the US. And if they lose these, they will be dramatic losses. And certainly if they lose these cases in the US, it will be followed by class action suits, which in the American system can completely destroy a company. So they're keeping a brave face, but the fact is that countries by and large are not going to NSO anymore. So they are going to others. NSO actually shook the American system also. Pegasus shook the American system. Biden administration has issued an executive order targeting manufacturers tied to abuses in other countries, human rights abuses, because most countries that are buying this equipment are not using it only for enhancing national security. So he has shut out these companies in the US. In the US itself, similar companies were active and their turnover was close to $12 billion. That's what the FT story tells you. So Biden has taken a strong view on it, and I quote from him. The exact quote is, US taxpayer dollars should not support companies that are willing to sell their products to abet human rights violations. This happened after the US government discovered that at least 50 US government employees, not all of them Americans, at least 50 US government employees, including citizens of other countries, but working for US governments, particularly in US embassies overseas. In fact, the trigger point was that 9 employees in the US embassy in Uganda, Entebbe, they were found to be infiltrated by Pegasus. And that's when the Americans reacted so sharply on it. So among the agencies that Indian side is said to have reached out to was a Greek agency which produces a software called Intellexa. That also is run by Israeli military veterans. I suspect all unit 8200. That has now led to a big snooping scandal in Greece that involves the spy chief and the prime minister also. And that software, Intellexa, that's been sold to, besides other countries, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Madagascar, Oman, all sort of similar types in some ways. Birds of a feather flock together, or birds of a feather spy together in this case. FT also tells us how dominant Israel is in this business. So they say in all the incidents of this type, that is spyware being used, mainly misused, in the 11 years between 2011 and 22, 80 cases have involved Israel. 80. Who's the second best? The next is Germany, which is a surprise. I would have thought the Germans have more discipline in these areas. So Israel is 80, Germany is 37, Italy is 34, US is 14, 1-4, China is 9, Russia is 7, and then Sweden 4, Canada 3. But basically, if you look at Israel, that is the dada of this business. Now a little bit about Cognyte before I let you go. Cognyte, founded as I told you by Israelis, most of the talent has come from Unit 8200, the best in the business. The chairman is Dan Bodner. The CEO is Elad Sharon. And if you go to the website, it's quite an interesting website, and see what they are saying. And I'll read from the website, and these pages will run on your screen as I read out. It says, actionable intelligence for a safer world. That is the tagline, right? And just note this, it's a trademark. Then it claims, again on its homepage, in the About section, 25 years, 1,000 customers, 100 countries. And then look at the claims that they make on their website. Number 1, where to find evidence to accelerate the investigation. Number 2, how to identify threats before they unfold. Number 3, does the suspect operate alone? Number 4, what is the suspect's next move? Number 5, how to identify threats before they unfold. And then it goes on to say, we empower security organizations to fuse data, generate insights, ignite action. And then there is a boast, we are market leaders in investigation analytics. Now that said, this story produced something that's got me chuckling since the morning. So the Congress party spokesperson Pawan Kheda, in his press conference, he harked back to a 1970s film, right? From which he quoted a song, Do Jasoos Kare Mehsoos Ke Duniya Badi Kharab Hai. Now you know when he says Do Jasoos, what the reference is to. So it also takes me back to a little vignette or a snapshot from our family life. So we go back almost 40 years when we had 2 dogs. You can see their picture on your screen. One is called Misha, the tinier one, the brown one is called Misha, and the slightly bigger one, relatively bigger, is Runa. Runa was our first dog, presented to us by the mother of a friend of ours as we got married. So Runa and Misha, and you see these two by our fence, by the fence of our little cottage in Shillong. And this picture must have been 1982 or thereabout. Now these 2 dogs, which were otherwise quite vain and quite ferocious, they were terriers. See the look on their face. That's because outside the house, across the fence, a couple of big roosters are passing by, and these dogs are scared of them. So they don't want to bark at them, right? They don't want to get closer to them or try and get closer to them, but they're looking at them with a great deal of curiosity. So in our family album, this picture is captioned, Do Jasoos Kare Mehsoos Ke Duniya Badi Kharab Hai. Kaun hai sacha, kaun hai jhoota? हर चेहरे पे नकाब है, ज़रा सोचो, ज़रा समझो, ज़रा संभल के रहियो जी. Those were the lines of the original song, but that is also something that applies to all this spyware stuff that goes on today.